activity and also prevent background noise. I will call on the relevant officer to present their report. If a member or officer wishes to ask a question or raise a point, please do so using the raise your hand function on your device. I will invite each member in the queue to speak, and at that point, please switch your mic and camera on. After you have spoken, please ensure that you lower your hand and put your mic and camera off. Your device should be positioned so that your image is clear to the other participants, and please speak clearly and concisely directly at the camera. When calling for agreement of recommendations at each item, a no show of raised hands will be taken as indication of the committee's approval. In regard to declarations of interest, members are reminded of the protocol. You must leave the virtual meeting by ending the call, which will be confirmed by the moderators to the chair, and following consideration of the item, you'll be invited back into the meeting by the moderator. Please ensure you remain present to accept the invite to rejoin. Finally, a reminder that the meeting is not being live streamed. However, be aware that it is being recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Corners website following the meeting. There is one urgent item at number 8 on your iPads, which will be taken at the end of the meeting. Before we commence with the main business on the agenda, I would like to mention that this will be Robert's last full Corner series of meetings and his last time at T&I committee. He will, of course, be here for the budget meetings next month. We are not letting him escape that easily. On behalf of myself, the Vice Chair, the committee and fellow officers, we wish you and your family all the very best for the future, and we will miss your presence here at the committee. You don't need to say anything, Robert.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we move on to the agenda proper now. First item is minute of meeting of 2nd December 2020, and that's for approval. Are we happy to approve? Yes, okay, thank you. Item 2, Northern Roads Collaboration Joint Committee minute of 28th August 2020, and that's for noting. Are we happy to note? Yes, okay, thank you. Item 3, Declaration of Interest. Members are asked to declare any interest they have in any items on the agenda. It would be helpful if members expressed why they are declaring an interest in the item concerned. Please do so now using the raised hand function. Seeing no raised hands, please ensure the declaration is repeated prior to the relevant item and you adhere to the protocol as previously indicated. Now we move on to traffic management issues. Number 4, Assay Place Prohibition of Vehicle Entry Order, and this is a report by Head of Property and Infrastructure. Yes, Councillor Macaulay. Ian Macaulay, you have your hand up.
Sorry, I was wanting. I'll allow the officer to speak on it first.
Okay, that's fine.
Sorry, I'm a bit early.
You're very previous, yes. There was a lot of discussion at the December committee on this matter, and a report has been brought back as requested, which provides an update on the current position with the implementation of the experimental order for Assay Place, and to advise on the process and timescales. The 4 objections received are outlined in the appendix, and Colin Mackenzie will provide the latest update regarding the objection and answer any questions. Colin Mackenzie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as you said, the report outlines the process to be followed in respect of progressing this proposal. We haven't managed to have discussions with all the objectors yet, but the report, as I say, outlines the process should we not be able to resolve these objections and go to report that. So the recommendations are at item 3, and I'll just have to take any questions on that, Chair.
Right, Councillor Macaulay, you have a question.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for that, Colin. I would just like to agree that we should go ahead and go ahead with the experimental phase of it. I noticed there was 4 objections. So there's been an awful lot more people urging and wanting this to go ahead. So I would definitely be in agreement to go ahead with it. My other question is, why are the submissions that we have there anonymous? I would have thought it would be. It's not standard practice to have. It certainly isn't the planning committee that I'm also on that they're not anonymous. So can they? Is there a reason why they're for the anonymity this time?
Callum, can you answer that question?
I don't know if legally they have to be anonymous, but I just thought for this one and for the following item on the 20th that at this stage they can be. Well, I'm presenting them as anonymous. I don't think there's any reason why we can't let you know who they're from, because there would be a hearing process anyway. But I think I would have to take a bit more legal advice as to whether I can make them public at this stage.
Well, if we can do that, Colin, and let us all know, or let Ian particularly know.
Yeah,
I will do it, yeah. I will do it.
Okay, I'm seeing...
Sorry, Chair, like I say, the ones at planning aren't, so I have absolutely no reason to see any, but thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ian. I'm seeing Councillor John Norman MacLeod next. John Norman.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you. With regarding very similar to what Ian Macaulay was saying there. To me, if there's no objections from the actual residents of Assay Place, I don't see any reason why this shouldn't be implemented. And yes, I definitely would like to see who actually has objected to the implementation of this this sort of temporary sort of thing. And because basically, why? I mean, Assay Place, I'm guessing it's the residents that are worried about the traffic going through Assay Place. Now, I'm guessing there's parked cars there, young kids. And supposing you're only doing 10, 15 miles an hour, that could have sort of drastic consequences, you know, if a kid runs out in front of a car, etc. But on the other reason, are they not being a wee bit selfish? Okay, if there's a queue up Willow Glen, so what? It's only 5-10 minutes wait. So I don't see who's objecting and why, and it'd be interesting to find out who they are. I wouldn't have a problem with finding out. Thanks.
Right, I think that's fairly clear now, the request from members, Colin, so if we can organise that. I'm seeing Councillor Callum McMillan next. Callum.
Thank you, Chairman. One of the things I would have to confess that I missed the
Shega triplet in at the Harlem.
Cavalish, I'm here in my sport. Cheers, it is so.
Norda gates of Woerchalm.
I had the fast group of good to you. Let me on bail. Cut the hair sassigo. Apologies, I missed December where you said there was a lot of discussion, but this seems to me that it's not just the residents of Assay Place. Now, I was in Assay Place along with Councillor Murray one time before this happened. I think it was the summer before last, I think it was. And there was quite a steady stream of traffic from the castle coming through Assay Place back onto I think it's Macaulay Road or one of these roads leading on. Now, I don't know if Callum, I don't know if Callum and the rest of the team considered it's a mixing of vehicular and pedestrian traffic, particularly young pedestrian traffic. And what we have to do as a council is seek to not just prevent the good people of the rest of town, Point, Ness and back areas from backing up all the way to the museum over that half hour. And it will take half hour before the traffic clears because of the junction at Willow Glen. But have we considered taking the exit from the castle to the roundabout at the old Mitchell's Garage. I'm not sure what it's properly called at the trading post there, at the Porter's Lodge, that we redirect the road so that we put the castle traffic onto the roundabout and have a 4-junction roundabout there, because there is space on that roundabout. It would take a bit of capital work, but we're doing capital work at the castle area anyway. So could that be a or has that been considered as a possibility of sorting this traffic at Willow Glen and Assay Place? So
Right, Colin.
Onto the roundabout. That's it. It was just an observation. Thank you, Chairman.
Can you answer that observation from Councillor Macmillan, please, Colin?
I can, Chair. Your suggestion there, Councillor Macmillan, if you were going to go directly onto the roundabout, would actually put you through Porter's Lodge, which isn't a wide enough or a suitable enough. So that's a pedestrian area just now. If you were to turn right as you come out of the current exit from the Lewis Castle Gardens, then you would have to turn left and then back up to the roundabout at what we would call Manor, and then back down into the other roundabout, because you have the central reservation and you have the access to the co-op there as well. So we have looked at that, and practically it's with capital anything is possible, but it's not practical in terms of traffic management just now to look at that.
Sorry, Chair, if I could
quickly, Colin.
Yeah. To use the existing exit out of the Castle Road, not use the Porter's Lodge road at all, but rather than going right as you come out, that you go left to the roundabout. That's what they would put 100 yards of road or something in to join the two up.
You want to respond to that, Colin?
I think that's me done.
You would need a much bigger study on that and considerable capital to look at doing something like that. I think the solution that's been looked at just now in terms of an experimental order would, if we were to implement and manage that, would give us probably a better solution than what's been suggested there. But that's our opinion just now.
Right. Okay, Colin. I'm seeing convener. You're next on the list.
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, I think there is an issue there for the residents of Assay Place, and I think we need to find some way of making sure that road safety is paramount within that area. The other thing is, the traffic that are using a bolt toll from the castle straight out onto Macaulay Road are going to have to turn left anyway, pretty much, or they can turn right. But there is a crossing there, and that could cause quite a bit of confusion. So I think there is an issue there that needs to be resolved. If you're talking about Willow Glen Road, when the traffic turn left and then turn right again towards the Manor roundabout, the traffic there is nothing compared with what it used to be when Arnish was at its height. And I'm sure many of us would rather have long traffic queues and people working there. But the reality is it's quite a convoluted process there, and whatever it's going to take quite a bit of money to resolve that issue. But the important thing is the safety of the children who are using that, some quite often from Stormay Primary, for going for walks in the castle grounds, and I think we need to be very mindful of that, and the children who are resident in that area as well. But I do think something needs to be done about it, but I certainly got no absolute solution at this stage.
Thank you, convener. I've got Councillor Norman MacDonald next.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee. I've been in discussions with a couple of the local residents in particular, one person in particular, and I don't think his objection will be. He won't sustain the objection. I think he had several issues that he wanted to raise with the traffic consultation group that were looking into this. there are several issues. The volume of traffic is at its peak twice a day, and the volume of traffic on Macaulay Road itself is quite excessive. I think I voted with Councillor Murray. I seconded his proposal 3 years ago for a no right turn into Assay Place. So I'm glad this is finally coming to some kind of fruition. Colin McMillan's suggestion about moving the traffic to the right prior to the Macaulay Road junction, the Assay Place junction, etc. As you come out of the golf club there's a right turn. As Cala said, that does involve going left again up to the roundabout to get back into the town, but you have to go out that way anyway to get back into the town. You don't want to go right at Canada Crescent, it's too narrow. You don't want to go right at Assay Place because that's what we're trying to prevent. I think several solutions were proposed and looked into, and this is an attempt to find out what the proposal would achieve, and I think I'm fully supportive of it. I know there have been several issues with diverting further traffic onto Macaulay Road itself, which I believe was some of the primary objections, but I think this is a good step forward. There may be other solutions proposed that might be looked at as well going forward, but I think the cost of it, Cala, was something in the region of £3,000 to £5,000 for applying for the change of use and the signage, etc., which I thought was a little bit much for a post that said no right turn, and maybe a couple of lines on the road. But I'm fully in support of doing something to stop traffic using Assay Place as a rat run, and I'm guilty of it myself. I have been in the past, but not latterly, because I know it's great cause of concern to the residents there. So I'm fully supportive of this.
Thank you, Councillor. Gordon, I'm seeing you next, Gordon Murray, and I did visit Assay Place with you, of course, prior to the pandemic, Gordon. So, Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee yet. I think we're all aware of the problems and the issues, and it's trying to resolve these. I noticed the objections in the recommendations. It is going to be implemented should the objections be resolved. And as Councillor MacDonald said, maybe these...
Sorry, Gordon, I've lost you anyway.
Sorry, can you still hear me? Sorry.
I never heard the last 2 or 3 minutes of that at all, Gordon.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Can you repeat it, please?
Yeah, I was just, I lost connection there. I'm sorry, that was my fault. It was just that one of the recommendations is that it should be implemented should the objections be resolved. But in my opinion, I would say some of the objections are quite arguable. So which objections are we talking about? Also, it'd be good to see who's actually objecting, because that would give us a flavour, because I don't think there's anyone in Assay Place objecting to it. I think the only way these things can be addressed is have the trial. And I know that Cala and his team have worked very hard on this small piece of road, and I think the residents are very, very grateful for that. But in order just to get it done, just get the trial, see what happens. It spans over, I think, is it 8 months or so? We'll know then whether it has a real detrimental effect. I don't think so, but surely that would address the concerns of the residents. But thank you for your consideration and the contributions by members. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gordon. Callum, do you want to respond to all that, and particularly 3.1b?
Yes, happy to chair. If we can resolve the objections, then we can implement the experimental orders straight away, just about. So if there has been any positive movement like that's been suggested, then we'll know over the next couple of weeks if that's the case. If there are any objections that do remain unsolved, then the process is to go to the Scottish Government reporter and take it through an appeal hearing. So that's the way the recommendations are structured. If we can manage the objections, then we can implement the experimental order straight away. If we can't, then we will go through the process to bring it to a conclusion as quickly as possibly. Councillor MacDonald mentioned the cost. Well, it's not just the cost of our post, the cost that we're going through to advertising or through the consultation as well. So that's all a cost to us in relation to the order. We have as well, if I may bring attention to this as well, through the Spaces to People project, one of the concerns or objections was that, the traffic and the speed going up Willow Glen Road was going to be increased. Now, what we've done is we've created a space around the exit from the Lewis Castle Gardens, the pedestrian exit, and encouraging parking along the left-hand side of the road there, which will actually slow down vehicles, because if you come out of the Lewis Castle Gardens, turn left, you see quite a wide empty road in front of you, so you can actually pick up a bit of speed. So what we're doing there in terms of an intervention will actually narrow the road. It'll give pedestrians a safe egress out of the grounds, and there's been positive comments about that so far. So that is another benefit that we've introduced. So that may help with some of the objections as well. So hopefully that answers most of the concerns. We will follow the process, but happy to take any other questions, Chair.
Right, in order. I've got
Chair,
Gordon next.
Can I come? Thank you, Chair. It's just about the objections. I mean, the CORLA decided this about 2 or 3 years ago, and I think it's actually been 10 years since this was brought up. And I'm not really that optimistic that objections that are still going on for 10 years can be resolved. So if we're waiting for objections to be resolved, I think it'll never happen. On the point of more traffic going up Willow Glen Road, Cal Macmillan made the point, or I think it was Councillor John Norman MacLeod, about just being a bit patient. But if there's more traffic, then the speed will go down surely, because no one will be able to speed. So it'll be possibly safer. And Willow Glen Road is a wide road. There's a lot of visibility. As I said at the last meeting, a safe place is people don't really choose to go through a safe place. They make a last-minute decision going at maybe 10 to 15 miles per hour, which is too fast for that small space. There's no visibility for children, and all of a sudden the car is there travelling at a speed. I know we've been through the arguments, but I think if we're waiting for objections to be resolved, it's going to go on and on and on as we've seen. So thanks for that, for letting me in again, Chair.
Okay, Gordon. I'll let Norman, the convener, in now. Norman.
Thank you, Chair. And it's just following on from what Gordon said there. I think we're never going to resolve all the objections, and I think as a roads authority, I think we need to make a decision on that and take it forward on that basis. Otherwise, it will never get done. The reality is the traffic coming in from Harris, from Oog, from everywhere else that come in Willow Glen Road, when they see cars coming up that road and wanting to turn right, very often, more often than not, you'll never see more than 2 or 3 cars waiting there to cut across the road and then turn to the manor roundabout. So I don't think there's a major issue there. Certainly it used to be the case when ours was at its height in terms of when the shifts changed. But I just think we need to take, as a roads authority, we need to take that forward and give the people in SA Place the assurance that they're looking for.
Okay, thank you, convener. I've got Councillor Kenny John MacLeod next, followed by Johnny McKeever. Kenny John.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I agree with the comments that have been made by colleagues, and just a couple of questions really. One is this is an experimental order. I know officers were keen to maybe defer it at the last time we considered it in order to get a more normal period of traffic flow rather than the COVID situation we have. But my question is really just since it will be an experimental period, what measures have you got resources and sufficient measures in place to monitor and feedback on the outcome of the experimental period? I certainly agree that the traffic through Willow Glen Road now is not frustrated to anything like the degree it was at one time. And perhaps it's not when the traffic is at its busiest, it's when the traffic is at its lightest that the speed of the traffic is greater as well. And I think the one final thing I would say is I hope that we will take cognizance of residents' concerns in rural areas in every bit the same way as we are in the more built-up areas. Because the traffic, we've got villages and rural areas with traffic going through at 60 miles an hour, where houses and people are walking, sometimes without payments. So I hope we will be equally considerate of the concerns of residents in rural areas. I'm sure you would expect me to say nothing less.
Well, no, and we always are as well, Councillor MacLeod. Callum, do you want to come back and answer that particular question?
I can't do it. I mean, in terms of the process just now with the objections, the way to bring this to conclusion is to go to the Scottish Government reporter, and that will then come up with a recommendation which we'll take back to Council. Council can agree to follow the recommendations, whatever they may be, or to take whatever action they deem appropriate. So that is the process to resolve the objections. So there will be a definitive timescale to that. As I outlined in the report, the first stage is to try to resolve the objections locally. If we can't, we will take in the reporter, who will give us a recommendation that will come back to Council, and a definitive solution or recommendation can be followed. In terms of the deferral, you mentioned, Councillor MacLeod, looking at our current COVID position and what the impact from the college traffic may be, officers are quite comfortable that if we continue to defer until COVID's over, then there's going to be, it is going to go on a bit. But if we were to implement this in the next traffic as well, so we don't really have a concern with that. In terms of the experimental review, yes, when we do implement it, we'll have officers just monitoring. The police actually help us with that as well, so we can monitor physically, so we can have visual inspections, but we can also monitor traffic levels with our digital recording equipment as well. So I hope that answers these last questions, Chair.
Thank you, Callum. I've got Jenny McKeever, Councillor McKeever.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with most of what has been said here. I think we just go ahead with the experiment, and if it ends up at the reporter, well, that will probably speed up things better than what's happening at the moment. And as well, I'd like to give Dalton Manford's apologies today because he can't be with us. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Johnny. I've got Yvonne's hand up as well.
That's for me, Chair. I'm just wondering whether I can, with Callum's apologies to Callum, whether it's worth amending recommendation D slightly and only bringing it back if the Traffic Commissioner disagrees with our recommendation. So if the Traffic Commissioner supports the proposal for the offer, would it be legitimate, Callum, through yourself, Chair, to simply for him being allowed to proceed with it?
Callum, I get a sense from members that they want to get on with this, and that we take B out entirely, quite frankly.
I'm happy with Robert's suggestion there that if we do take it to the reporter stage, if the reporter agrees with our recommendation, then we just implement.
Does that make sense, Chair?
Are members of the committee happy with that as a suggestion?
Yes.
Yes.
Have you got that, Mayasheen, and can you maybe read it out?
Yes. So you're remaining A, B, and C as is, but that, and on the basis that the Scottish Government Planning and Environmental Appeals Office agree that the Head of Property and Infrastructure proceed to implement and promote the experimental order.
Yes, Gordon.
Thanks, Chair. I think you were a bit uncomfortable with B, with getting the objections resolved. Is that still the case?
Robert?
Chair, I would suggest there's no harm leaving B in, and Cala has the opportunity to resolve it. It may be that a quick word with the objectors about the position the Cora has adopted may resolve the problem, and I think we shouldn't preclude that. I think the clear steer from the committee is that if it's not going to be resolved, let's refer the matter with speed to the Traffic Commissioner. Well,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
I think it's not sense of what the committee wants, but I would prefer that we had the opportunity to resolve it if we possibly could.
Okay, that seems fair enough, but I think it's quite clear members want to get on with this. So if members are happy with the recommendation as read out by Mayashina,
Happy.
Can we approve?
Yes.
Approved.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We move on now to item number 5, winter maintenance. This report provides an update on the current financial spend and the outcome of service redesign discussions from the Transportation and Infrastructure Strategic MOUG held on 15th December 2020. Callum Mackenzie will speak to the report and answer any questions. Right, Callum, let's have the bad news.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, the current estimated spend to date on winter maintenance activities this season is sitting at 1.4 million. Our budget is 1.412 million, so we've got £12,000 left in budget to the end of the year. If we were to assume that we would be gritting 1 day in 3 in February and March, then we're probably looking at an overspend on this budget of around £600,000. So that's the current financial update. I don't know. Do you want me to stop there, Chair, before we go?
Yes, that's fine. We'll expect a few questions on this column. And Johnny, is that your legacy hand still up? I'm assuming.
Yes, sorry,
Okay.
it doesn't show that. It doesn't show that it's up here, but
Does it not? Okay.
enough now.
Technology must be better in North Hughes than it is.
Aye, yeah. It might not
Right.
be all 5 fingers that would have been up.
Okay, Councillor Grant Fulton. Yes, it's gone off. Grant Fulton.
Thank you, Chair. Well, firstly, I'd like to recognise the fantastic work that the Collier did, particularly over this weekend, and their efforts in gritting the roads. It should be recognised that we experienced really bad conditions with extensive snow and ice, and the gritters were out a lot. But a number of roads remained out of action in Harris. I received numerous calls, emails, messages all over the weekend complaining about the roads, particularly Scalpay, the Bays, Luskintyre, Leverburgh and South Harris in general. The complaints were mostly from carers, in fact, and I received a long email from Leverburgh Care Home from the manager of Leverburgh Care Home, stating, the insociable hours they work, hours that they commence and finish work, and staff leaving home very early in the morning. And she Isabel, the manager, basically said the roads were diabolical and extremely unsafe for staff driving. They even covered Sunday evening shifts with people closer at hand to save people having to travel, as we were concerned for their safety. So I was getting sent videos and pictures and everything. So if we do experience similar very, very extreme snow and ice like we did last weekend, and I know there's huge budgetary implications, but would it be possible to look at enhanced gritting and the potential of also providing grit boxes in locations around the more inaccessible areas? Post wasn't able to be delivered, and all the rest. And just let me say that everyone in Harris does really, really appreciate the excellent efforts of the gritters. There's absolutely no question about that, and we're not criticising the boys in the road who are doing an extremely difficult job, and we're out a lot, but just we potentially do need enhanced gritting if we get a replication of these extreme, and I do recognise that they were extreme conditions, and we don't experience conditions like that. And I'd also like to thank Cala for responding to me very, very quickly as well. I think I inundated him with emails, so thanks for that. So thank you, Chair, for that. Thank you.
Callum, would you prefer to take them question by question, or wait until everybody? A lot of them will be fairly similar, I would guess.
I could maybe give you a summary of complaints if that actually helps. The kind of issues that have been complained about have we tend to get the same kind of complaints every year, to be fair, and they are generally around people moving around early in the morning. So carers, hospital staff, etc., when they're leaving for work before the British on the road. There's even we have school buses on the roads before the British are on the roads. And what I tend to explain as clearly as I can is that it's impractical for any local authority to keep all the roads clear all of the time. And even the difficulties in actually going out earlier, where, you know, by the time the British been on the road, it needs a fair bit of traffic before the road is actually clearing. So there are practical implications, which we've previously explained at the member seminars on gritting. But if I maybe give an example of the responses that we give to the likes of carers, is that they have to evaluate whether it's safe to travel on the road based on the policy that we have. And if they can't undertake their journey, then they have a process in place through their management structure to say, I can't get to that carer, and something else will kick in place to cover that. So that's been the general form of complaint. And the responses are generally that we can't practically get in front of everybody, and people need to exercise caution when they're on the road. So our staff have been, I mean, I thank you for the positive comments that are given to our staff. We, in the past, about 10, 11 years ago, were doing a lot more gritting. We had an enhanced policy at that stage, and there was a lot more money being spent on it and overspent on it. But from that perspective, we were still receiving the same complaints, because we still can't get roads clear for everybody when they need to do their travel. So whether we can actually have increased communication on that, or some means of making that clear to the public, that's maybe something to do. So I'll stop there again, Chair. So yeah, maybe that's reflected some of the complaints.
Okay, thank you, Colin. I've got a number of hands up here. Councillor Kenny John MacLeod is next.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was just really a comment on the discussions we had at the MOG previously, where we looked at a range of options, and they're reflected in the report. I think it is an indication of her concern that we cannot simply have a substantial reduction in the budget and still attempt to deliver the level of service that we've been doing up till now. I think there was mention at one time as well that with contractors sometimes, although we have a latest date, a latest time for the service to be delivered, they sometimes do it even earlier than that for their own purposes. And I think that obviously is to the benefit of the travelling public. But were they just simply to do it within the very latest deadlines, there might actually be even more issues. So I hope that the council as a whole will not seek to get this budget reduction implemented, and that has been recognised. But at the same time, I think we also recognise that we need to be looking at whether there are other ways that we can deliver the service more efficiently, and if not get a service reduction, possibly even get a better coverage than there is at the moment within the monies available. So I think in the report, Colm, we were talking about reflecting and seeing what in-house options could be available, and that possibly we will get some further report on that in the months ahead once the picture is a bit clearer. So thank you for that, Chair.
Right, Robert, is that you?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, Kenny John raised some important points, and I know at the MAUG, he was highlighting the pressure that is on the budget, and you know, we've certainly had the last, I think we have to go back about 4 years now before we had an underspend into maintenance. Calla will be able to tell you better, but meteorologists were suggesting that we could expect colder weather later in the year, and that seems to be what we are getting at the moment. And obviously, an overspend in the budget puts pressure on our use of balances when we come to look at the overall budget position after the settlement on Thursday. So the position is tight. I'm taking the view that and we'll formally consider this as part of the budget, is if we're not prepared to look at priorities, which is entirely your imperative, then we won't achieve the level of savings, and there'll be some more modest savings achieved from how we run the operation. But fundamentally, the cost of what we do is putting salt down on the road across the islands when the weather's bad, and if you don't do less of that, then there will be a cost. And clearly the feedback that's coming through the comments and the concerns from constituents is around ensuring the roads are kept as safe as we possibly can.
Okay, thank you, Robert. I've got Councillor Angus Morrison next.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, gridding and winter maintenance is something that I get, my inbox is filled with every year since I came into council. But first of all, on the financial side, I think we need to, I mean, the figures are there. If we're estimating already, we're going to be 600,000 overspent. And that's an estimate from Mr. Mackenzie. We're probably going to be more than that, depending on the weather that's coming. We're clearly not putting enough money into this budget. And I think we did the right decision at the Member Officer Working Group to knock back the suggestion of taking £250,000 out of this budget. That's my first point. But going to the recommendation B that's on here, I agree that the current priorities for winter service be maintained. I've got a bit of an issue with that, and as Mr. Mackenzie knows, we've been looking at this, and he's had a lot of complaints from one village in particular in my ward, which I've had a lot of representation from this year. And again, I'd like to thank the gridder driver for the work that he has done. This specific village, the roads were that bad. It's a priority 3 route, which is a treatment time of 9:30 when there is a P3 priority called. The 2 times or 3 times this year, or in the past week actually, or the last 10 days, the road was so bad that the gridder had to reverse in to put grid onto that village road. Now, to me, that suggests that village would not, nobody in that village could have driven on that road safely. And the safety of the residents is paramount. I know that there are certain times when people shouldn't be on the road and they should drive to the conditions, but we touched on this earlier on. I mean, as carers, we've got carers on this road. One of the questions I was going to raise was, if we're going to look at the recommendations in front of us, could we get some scope for a reassessment of some of the routes that are already P3s? Given that there's probably 10, maybe 12 years since this policy was first done, the landscape has changed quite dramatically in some of these villages, with more people and more children, more workforce from carers to very elderly population needs looking after. There's more carers travelling on the road. But the point I was going to say was, from a hospital point of view and NHS point of view, I know from our own carers point of view that they report in if the road is deemed unsuitable to travel on. Do we know what the situation is for the hospital? Because I've had quite a few nurses from the hospital be in touch in the last few weeks who found it very difficult to travel and who had to get their partners or spouses to take them into work and back again. I don't know what the position is there. You know, are are we telling these people not to go to work? And then if they're not going to go to work, we've been more pressure on the service at health. There's a raft of issues, but I would like something to be put into B here in the recommendation that we review, when we are going to do this review, that we don't keep them at all the priorities as they are at the moment, but that a review be done of the areas, either with local members or with, I know it's not going to be a satisfactory answer for financial solutions, but it's one road in particular, one village in particular I have. I know other members will have a lot of others, but we need to make an assessment of the changes that have been there in the last 10 years. If we're going to do we're going to come to do a re-tender option anyway. We should be building this in, I think. I know it's a lot of work, but I feel we should be putting something in there. It's going to go, we can't satisfy everybody, I know, but I think we can't look on a village that was in a priority 10 years ago thinking it's going to be exactly the same residents that are in there today. I make one reference, and I'll finish with this, where there's one road that is a P3. It's only about a 200-metre road. 10 years ago, one car was on that road. Today, there are 9 cars on that road travelling back and forth every day. Thanks, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Morrison. I'm afraid we've all got these issues. Robert, I'll let you back in.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we have to be careful here about the basis of the gritting policy. And our duty is to keep the roads free, reasonably free from snow and ice so people can travel on them. But our policy is not based on the number of people or the work of the people on each road. And I think that absolutely, if members wish to revisit the policy, they can revisit the policy. But I'm prepared to bet that every member could come back with a number of areas in their ward where they think that circumstances mean there needs to be gritting on those roads. And this is a real challenge for us. We don't have resources to do vastly more gritting. Carla was telling me this morning, even 12 years ago when we had a more generous policy, we still had endless numbers of complaints about areas that had not been gritted. It's very difficult to make sure that we can keep everybody happy within limited resources. Indeed, even with unlimited resources, it is sometimes not possible to provide gritting to and adequately predict what the weather is going to do and when the weather is going to do it. We possibly have the most reactive service in Scotland. Carla was telling me this morning, if we worked on a temperature and weather forecast basis, we would have been out gritting and spending £20,000–30,000 this morning. But because we have scouts who went out and checked the condition of the roads, it wasn't necessary. So by all means, members can revisit the priorities of roads, but have to recognise the reality of a budget which is already under pressure. And I would hazard that if Councillor Morrison is aware of an area where constituents are concerned, likewise, so will all other members be aware of areas in their wards, as Mr. Fulton was highlighting just earlier on, where there will be very quickly, you'd have a significant extension of the policy. But that's not to say that if you want us to look at it, we won't look at it. But I think that will be a challenging exercise. And to be fair, we would have to look, I think, across the piece at those chairs. I wonder, Chair, whether you might wish to invite Mr. Mackenzie just to give an outline of the basis of the prioritisation, because I understand it's not based on who lives down a road, it's based on the risk of the road in terms of steepness and stuff, and the distance that you might be from a P1 route, for example. But perhaps Mr. Mackenzie is better placed to provide some of that technical direction.
Thank you very much.
Chair, if I may, before you ask Mr. Mackenzie, just come back briefly, Chair. One of the things that I have noticed on this particular village I'm talking about, it's delivered by, the gritting at the moment is delivered by an out-of-house contractor, and they're doing a first-class job there. Now, I'm going to recommendation C, we're going to look for in-house delivery. I think this contractor is actually bent over backwards in the past 10 days to deliver a good service to this village. It is a P3. They were in yesterday, I checked, at 7:30 in the morning, which is way beyond the treatment time of P3. All villagers were satisfied and totally happy with this. But I understand that the reason it probably was done, and my concern would be, and maybe Mr. Mackenzie can address this too, we're going to look at an in-house delivery. Would there be flexibility like the current contractor has, where he maybe has to have all his fleet back in a yard by, say, 9 o'clock in the morning to start with his day-to-day work? This is something that has been beneficial in this, and if this could be maintained in this one specific instance that I have, if it was in-house we were doing, I don't think there'd be any questions asked about it. So there may be some flexibility throughout the whole policy when we're looking at it. And I just wanted to throw that in before Mr. Mackenzie comes back and answers the questions. Thanks, Chair.
Right, Callum, can you answer along the lines that Robert has suggested? And I know we've had this discussion many times over the last several years, so but go through it again, please. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chair. If members look at the priorities throughout the Western Isles, you'll see that there's a consistency and experience has been used in the prioritisation of the gritting. So the main issue, the main thing we're trying to achieve is that the main routes, priority 1 routes, and in effect priority 2, are treated like a minimum network that we would look to do, and get people close to their homes, so to speak. So whether you're leaving from home or travelling back home, that you have a relatively short distance to travel before you're on a treated route. Now that came from reviewing from 2011. This was reviewed from the view that we need to look at what we're doing and we need to reduce our costs, basically. So that resulted in that consistent prioritisation throughout the islands, and the difficulty I have with looking at any specific route is that it then impacts on every other P3. So I don't think the route that Councillor Morrison was talking about is special from any other, or stands out from any other P3 route, because we have considerably larger P3 routes as well. So the likes of the road into Hushinish, the road to Renegadale, the Besa Harris Road, these are all P3 routes as well. And we're trying to have a consistent approach throughout the islands, within the knowledge that we physically can't cover every single road by the time that people are on them. So coming back to communication, I think that needs to be reiterated to people. It's just a physical impossibility for us to do that within the climate and within the resources that we have. And if people were to look at other local authorities, they will see that this level of service and the level of coverage that we're guaranteed within certain target treatment times is in advance of these other authorities. Looking at the specific point that Councillor Morrison brought up about, having a special allocation for that village that he's mentioning, if we did go in-house, I couldn't guarantee that if that was still under the same priority, that it would be done earlier. The contractor there has managed to work it into his route to get there earlier, and these are target treatment times. They will be gritted by such a time. So if we do go in-house, I couldn't guarantee that, because the in-house team wouldn't be rushing back to the yard for 8 o'clock to start their day job. They would manage the resources throughout the day. I hope that answers the questions.
Right, Callum, we've got a lot of people wanting in here, so convener, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think the reality is we all know that we could be talking about this particular topic until this time next year and possibly the following year as well. And I think the reality is, you're talking about priority 3 roads. There are 10 miles of priority 3 roads that very rarely get gritted in my own location, and 4 or 5 villages within that. And what we need to ask people to do is for them to make the decision as to whether they travel or not. And if they feel it's unsafe, they phone their employer or whoever and say, I won't be able to get in till 10 o'clock this morning because of the state of the roads. And I'm sure most employers would rather have their employees come in a couple of hours late rather than trying to see them put themselves in jeopardy and end up end up in a serious situation. So drivers ultimately have to take responsibility for the way that they drive and whether they drive or not. And we need to keep pushing that argument as much as we can, because it's absolutely impossible to grid the roads to the extent that everybody would ideally like. And we've not had a bad year this year in terms of snow. There has been some ice in the last week or so, and people have been mindful of that. And I think we need to make sure that people fully understand that it is practically impossible for the Comhairle or any other local authority to guarantee that the roads are safe to drive on at 60 mile an hour or 40 mile an hour in the conditions that we have. So we could be talking about this for a year and a half before we decide we still can't fix it. We need to do what we can with the resources we have, absolutely, and we need to target these resources, and that's where the prioritization has come in, and it's generally speaking very effective. But we need to be strong enough to say to people, if you don't think it's safe to travel, don't travel. If you need support with your employer or whoever, the Comhairle will support people.
Thank you, Convener. I've got Councillor John Norman MacLeod next.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I've just looked at a couple of points, but firstly, I'd like to agree with what Callum Mackenzie said there on the very good service we provide. That is so true compared to other local authorities. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people in the Highlands that wouldn't even know what a gridder is. They've never seen one before. But anyway, that's not what it means. A couple of wee points. This is sort of indirectly towards gridding. We get a forecast every day from whichever engineer is on duty at the time, which is excellent. That's brilliant, you know. And I can see this forecast myself personally, right? But the thing is, there's a lot of our employees who work the next day who can't see this forecast, and I'm naming particularly at carers here, right? Now, I did ask for Texeros. I says, why could they not give the employees the same sort of copy? But they were saying, well, we pass them on to the line managers of the carers, which they do, because I see the two names. You can see the list of names there. Now, I would like to see, so I was going to bring this up yesterday actually on communities and housing, but there was nothing on the agenda where I could sort of mention it. So I'm just going to mention it here, that it would be good to give these people who start early, their own employees, the forecast, to pre-warn them. What's the roads going to be like? Are we going to be at -3? Are we going to be at +3? And just to pre-warn them so that they can prepare themselves to go out. That's one thing. The other thing, it's a simple question, and I think I know the answer. I've only had one question already. Of course, we all know what happens when we grid. The roads are full of potholes. I'm guessing my answer, someone saying, when are we going to fill the potholes? I said, I'm guessing it's after gridding. After the gridding is finished, we fill the potholes. Am I still correct in saying that? Thank you.
Can you respond to that, Callum? And just to add a comment, my own sister's a home carer, and I know her line manager gives them warnings the night before about the condition of the road, etc. So it does filter down to some home carers, I know.
Not on this side. Okay.
But can you answer John Norman's question on potholes, Callum?
I can. We'll generally try to keep on top of things. When the guys are out all week gritting, then it's very difficult to get immediately to a pothole or whatever. But they'll generally be classed as, is it an emergency to go and deal with it? I mean, if you're a deep pothole in a critical area, we will go out and fill it. And over the last few weeks, we have been doing pothole repairs as well as necessary. So we don't leave everything till after the winter. We will do what we can during the winter as well.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks, Callum. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Callum. I've got Councillor Ronald Fraser next. Ronald.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's with reference to item C in the recommendations regarding looking into the options of providing an in-house delivery at some point in the future. I would assume that the contingency of providing in-house service is something that Cordia factors on a semi-regular basis, purely for fallback reasons. So I'm very keen to know if such costings or even base financial assumptions might have been prepared or are available.
Callum, can you answer that?
I can, thank you, Chair. I did pause at the winter maintenance expenditure to take that kind of reaction or discussion on the current policy. I was going to go on.
Well, do you want to leave that to? Do you want to leave that till the end then, Callum? If Ronald's happy with that,
well, I'm happy to deal with that specific question just now. It's quite an easy one to answer. We are looking at the cost of in-house delivery has been an option. We need to do a bit more work on it. What we were seeking from the MIG was a direction on where to look for savings, but the in-house delivery would give us more cost certainty, and that's why we're looking at it. It may actually cost us more to deliver the service on an average winter, but what you would have would probably be able to cap the overspends, because we would have basically fixed costs, unable to guarantee what the cost would be. And currently, when we contract the service out, then it's based on mileage rates for gridding. So the contractors will price on that basis, and that's why when you get a really severe winter, your costs increase exponentially. Whereas if you had an in-house delivery, then you're not dealing with so much of a mileage cost, but a fixed cost for actually providing the service. Thank you, Chair.
Are you happy with that response, Ronald?
Yeah. Just to clarify, it's a more in the long term, it's a more financially sound option, and there are less fluctuations. Is that correct?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. There's less of a fluctuation in cost if we have more fixed cost in house, although the base cost may be higher.
And finally, the reaction time for that to be set up. What are we looking at? Can that be done very quickly? Months?
No, and I think at this point, I'll just say that we're going to look into it in more detail to see what is involved. But there are other complexities into that, such as if we're going to do it all in-house, we'd probably have to double our gridding fleet, our employees, drivers, our garage services, make sure we've all got all that capacity. So the further work I'll be doing will be giving members a lot more detail on what that would entail.
Okay, thank you, Callum, and thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Colin. I've got Councillor Gordon Murray next. Gordon.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee. Firstly, I'd like to thank Cal and his team for helping me get salt bins around Manor Park. I think that's a great solution to some of the concerns of gritting, especially on payments. So I'm really thankful for the quick turnaround that himself and Murdo and the team gave. The second point was kind of following on from the discussion on care workers, and I suppose we've got a duty of care to employees as well as trying to maintain the service. Would it be possible to supply care workers with winter tyres? And as the convener also said, maybe putting things out, public notices to say, you know, essential travel is recommended when the roads are not adequate for travel, are really in a bad way. I mean, that might save people, because there's quite a lot of people now home working. So I'd imagine the people that are out driving on these treacherous conditions are people that have to and have care responsibilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. Maybe Robert can answer this, but I've had that kind of raised with me by Councillor McNeill, I think it was, suggesting that winter tyre provision to carers, we should look at that. Robert, could you maybe comment on that?
I can, Chairman. I think it's for individual car drivers to make their own assessment of whether it's safe to drive and how they should equip their car to drive. One of the issues we have, I would say, generally, is people don't consider winter tyres as an option for personal use. So it applies equally, I think, to personal use and to business use. But I think those are decisions for the owner of the car. I don't know what. I'd have to find out. I don't know whether we make particular provision with our own vehicles that are pool cars and what have you in terms of winter tyres. But I think that's a matter. I don't think we could get involved with dictating and paying for winter tyres for private car users. But I think it makes sense for people to be looking at it and remembering, of course, that there is reimbursement for mileage, for business mileage that is paid to cover wear and tear on vehicles. I think the one thing that I do take away from this meeting is that we should just review to make sure information on winter conditions and forecasts is passed on to staff who need to know it. But except in very extreme weather, by and large, it is the driver of the car who has to be able to decide whether or not it's safe to travel based on the conditions they are faced with. And we all know that conditions can vary significantly across the different parts of the island. There are already mechanisms in place, as you yourself has referred to make sure that staff are advised when conditions are particularly poor. That's something I'm happy, Chair, that we'll have a look at.
Okay, thank you
Chair,
for that.
Chair,
Robert.
can I come back? So
yes, I'll allow. Yes, Gordon, I'll allow you back in. Yes.
It's just that it's not strictly, personal use that I'm talking about. I mean, they're using cars to provide a service. Would it be possible to look at maybe increasing the reimbursement to carers to cover winter tyres to help them, go about the carers' business in a safe way? Thanks.
Robert? Yes or no?
Well, Chairman, I think the decision as to what cars you put on your tyres you put on your car is a matter for the driver of the car. We're talking. I mean, it is potentially an expensive process. If we think it's essential, if we were to think it was essential for anyone driving a car for council business that we paid for them to have to put winter tyres on, then that would be a change in policy. If the committee wishes us to go away and have a look at that, then that will be something you'd have to refer to HR to have a look at. And if the committee wants us to do that, then we will obviously do it. Perhaps what would be best would be to provide Mr. Murray with, I don't have it to hand, with the latest guidance that goes to staff from HR in relation to that, and he can consider whether that's something that he wants to pursue further more formally.
Okay, thank you for that, Robert. I've got Councillor Norman MacDonald next.
Hi, Chair. Again, I'm not a member of your committee, and we do tend to go over this ground periodically around about this first meeting of the year. I think we've done a fantastic job educating the public as to the constraints on the winter gritting policy. I think many of them, in fact, most of them, understand the cost implications and why the policy is in place, and they're very largely happy with it. I think, as in many cases, and I've been educated in this in the last 3 years by wiser and older councillors who've told me that 5% of the population make 100% of the noise, and we spend an inordinate amount of time dealing with that noise. I'd just like to say that this winter, in point, I noticed Alistair came on a wee while ago. He might be able to back me up on this or contradict me completely. I've had one representation about a request to grit a particular slope and point this winter. Other than that, I've heard nothing this year. So I can only commend the gritters and the maintenance team, Cala and the guys, for the hard work and the job that they do. I get a regular weather forecast from Murdo. I post it on our own page for the benefit of the public who subscribe to the page, just a Facebook page with a weather forecast on it. I think they do a great job, and I think rather than me go on about shortcomings that may be evident and they get pointed out every year, we can't keep 100% of the people happy 100% of the time. Could we do better? We could with more money, obviously, but money's a huge consideration here. But I would just like to a huge commendation to Cala and his team for a fantastic job. Well done. Thanks to all the guys who have kept us safe this winter and will continue to do so. So well done, guys. I hope Alistair doesn't come on now and say he's got 20 complaints that I haven't heard of. So well done.
Thank you for that, Norman. I've got Angus McCormick next. Angus.
Sorry, it took a wee while first show. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee, I just would like, as so many others have done, to commend Calla and his team for the work that they do. I think it's absolutely wonderful. And somebody said before that if you had a service like we had on the mainland, you would be actually delighted to have that. We have a very, very good service here. And the problem is that we just cannot address all of the issues that we face. I would like to give you just one example. The road from Plasterfield through Moss End Corner into town is a high priority route, and it is well looked after. But there have been many, many occasions when on a winter's day, by lunchtime it is refrozen, and it is quite treacherous. And there's no way that, I just don't know how you can accommodate that kind of situation happening, and it will happen all over the place. So we just have to do the best that we possibly can. And the other point I'd like to make is about the responsibilities that individuals have as to whether or not to travel. I think we have made it clear to our staff that they should not travel if the road is dangerous, and that is quite correct. They just call in and say, I can't get in. And the same thing applies with the Western Isles Health Board. They have advised their staff that if the road or the conditions, weather conditions are such that they cannot travel, they should not travel, and then the management have to find another solution to resolve the situation. That is how we should deal with it. There is absolutely no way that we can produce circumstances which would satisfy everybody in the island. We have to depend on individual drivers taking sensible decisions in their own, in the needs of their own safety, and in the safety of all sorts of other people too. And as far as winter tires are concerned, if you hit a piece of black ice, winter tires will do you absolutely no good whatsoever. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Angus. I've got Councillor Ray McKenzie next.
Thanks, Chairman. I'm not on your committee, but thank you. I'd also like to thank Callum and Murdo and the department for reacting so quickly to some requests I made. And that was, you know, it was actually, I was told that one day that the matter would be dealt with sometime this week, and when I got back to the place, it had been done about 5 minutes before. So that was excellent service. My question is about the savings on costs, and I was just not been on the committee, and I'm not sure if I missed this in the past, but I was just wondering what the position is with the salt barn. Did we get it, and if so, has it made any difference, savings? And if not, what's happening?
Well, the salt barn has been discussed a number of times, and I think we discussed it at the last meeting. But anyway, can you briefly mention this state of play with the salt barn, Callum?
Thanks, Chair. The salt barn the proposals came in well over budget. So currently we're keeping the salt dry by covering it. I mean, the cover shall be proving quite effective. What we're looking to do longer term is to create a concrete base which we can cover with tarpaulin as well. So that'll be a much more functional solution into the future. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Callum. I've got Colin McMillan next. Colin. Colin McMillan.
Thank you, Chair. I can't help observing that the answer to the problem of council finances is global warming when I see the amount of money in winter maintenance. But on a more practical note, the idea of putting our daily road forecasts into general usage, not just for our own people, but if we have, as the council have paid for them, then could we put them out more widely? I'm not quite sure if the council has a Facebook, or if there is such a thing as a council Facebook, or is that just too sad altogether? Do people use Facebook? But to get it into circulation so that people who might have to work in the have got access to where they're going. That's it. Thank you. And so it's just so that everyone knows, because preparation, if it's going to be frosty in the morning, because generally it is frost rather than snow, if you're going to be, say, 2 hours late, so that a day like today, there is what was in the morning, what could have been frost has gone, although today it was quite a wash. The roads were well washed today, but for frosty morning, so that people could delay their starts rather than feel they're forced to be there on time. Thank you, Chairman.
Right,
Chair.
Colin. Yes, Robert.
Sorry, Chair. I mean, we already put out quite a lot of information. I've in response to Councillor Murray, I've said we'll have a look at it. We will have a look at this. I think the communications team try not to put out excessive information. So warnings go out generally on when there is particularly cold weather. We'll have a look at that and see whether there's anything we can do to improve it. But we are already putting information out and trying to warn people when to expect icy conditions and tell them when we're going to be out gritting, particularly when it's more severe.
Okay, thank you for that, Robert. I've got Keith Dodson next. Councillor Dodson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. It's relating to, it was mentioned, was the potholes. Now, it's an old cliche that you fill in the pothole and then about 3 months later, you have to go back again. I'm just wondering, a few members may recall that wasn't there an investment in a machine, that we purchased a machine that could actually shot blast into these potholes and make a permanent seal. Do we still have that machine? Because I've never seen it in use. Thank you, Chair.
Colin, briefly.
We still have that machine. The reason you don't see it in use over the winter is it becomes a gritter. It is used during the summer, and it doesn't give a permanent solution. The only way you can get a permanent solution in a pothole is to cut out round it and fill it properly. So whenever we do pothole repairs, they are very much temporary, and even the machine that we have, they're very much temporary repairs. Thank you,
Okay,
Chair.
thank you, Colin. Alistair MacLeod, I think, is the last question we have. Alistair?
Apologies, to save the best for last, Tushton.
Yes.
I'm going to give Cala a break, and I'd like to ask Robert this question. I mean, we're obviously heading for a huge overspend on winter maintenance, and the question is, how are we going to plug this overspend, and will it have a knock-on effect in our budget setting on the 27th of February? Thank you.
Robert?
So the short answer is, Councillor MacLeod, yes, it will, and we will have to take it into account. If we're talking of an overspend potentially of £500,000, then if you recall from the discussion that we had earlier in the week, and we've had if you look at the papers from the budget book, that would use up any flexibility imbalances that we expect to have. Now, we're in the process of updating the monitoring, and we'll bring that all back to you as part of the budget. But clearly, absolutely critical to that will be the settlement that we get as part of the Scottish budget on Thursday. So I will provide a further update, hopefully at the end of the week, for members for how that is looking. But I think we will have to factor in two things arising from the debate on winter maintenance: a forecast overspend on revenue this year, and a lower achievement, or a non-achievement of the potential savings from reviewing the priorities in winter maintenance in 2 years' time.
Thank you, Robert.
Okay, thank you, Robert. At least you didn't disagree with Councillor Norman MacDonald anyway, Councillor MacLeod. I've got some legacy hands up: Norman MacDonald, Angus McCormick and Keith Dodson.
Mine is legacy.
Keith? Okay, can we move on to the recommendations at 3.1 then? Are we happy with the recommendations, or is
Happy to agree.
Happy to agree. You've lost the will
Agree.
to live, clearly. Yep. Okay. That's agreed. Can we move on to item 6, Harbour Board, Internal Audit Report by Designated Person 2020-2021. This is the annual report detailing the outcome of the Designated Persons Review of Coral Piers and Harbours for 2020-2021. I would remind the committee as the Harbour Board and duty holder as defined by the Port Marine Safety Code of our accountability for marine safety and monitoring as outlined in the covering report. Paul McCaskill will address the findings of his report, which is at Appendix 1, and both he and Kenny Morrison, Harbour Master, are available to answer any questions. Now, Paul, do you have anything to add to your report?
No specific issues, Chair. I'm happy to take any questions. The main points are highlighted on page 2 of the report at paragraph 1.5. We did highlight a number of good practice points as well, which is worth noting. The main issue there on 1.5 is some of the legacy infrastructure that we have, which is no longer used for what it was intended for way back a number of years, and which there is unrestricted access to, but due to that and public potential to access these facilities, we have a duty to maintain them to a certain standard, and also to make sure that there's proper safe mechanisms in place. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Kenny Morrison, do you have anything to add at this point?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple of points I wanted to add to that. Just thanks to Paul for the report, an excellent piece of work, and it certainly runs down in the Port Marine Safety Code. It's something that we are required to do, is it's continual audit, but there is a recommendation and a requirement within the Port Marine Safety Code to carry out a 3-yearly external audit, and this is something that we did plan for the end of last year, but with COVID restrictions and just continuing COVID issues, we're not able to do that at the moment. So it'll be, we'll wait until the restrictions ease on COVID, and we'll hopefully get a tender out for external audit of the Port Marine Safety Code compliance. And the one other thing that we will have and I'll have before you for the next committee series is the 3-yearly compliance letter, which goes to the MCA. It's due at the end of March this year, so that needs to be signed, agreed by the duty holder, is the Harbour Board, this committee, and signed by the chair. So I'll hopefully have that before you for the next committee. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Kenny. I've got convener. You have a question.
Just very briefly, Chair, in relation to the rusting materials that are on piers and on slipways there, I think, do we have some safety notices indicating that? I can't see them in some of the photos that have been presented, and also certainly at the Valtus Pier, where you have really badly corroded bars of steel across, I think the best option for that is just to, it's literally built into the pier, and the best option is just to cut these bars off or burn them off, so that people don't climb up and down them. So I think there needs to be some tidying up, but there also needs to be safety warnings where certainly handrails and things like that have either been corroded or have come out of the concrete.
Kenny, Paul, who wants to answer that?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak with that. In regards to the ladders themselves, I would say that they are rusty, but it doesn't mean that their integral strength has gone. It just but we have done a programme of replacement of ladders over the last couple of years through the capital programmes. That's a fairly significant number of them have been replaced. Valtus is one that we are in the process of, where it's one of those that there's an ownership issue in regards to the actual pier. So we are looking at it. But I'll revisit the railings again and make sure that if there is these corroded railings, that they are replaced.
Okay, what about the issue of notices where there are issues, Kenny?
The notices to mariners generally goes out if there is issues, but I can't say that I've put any out for regards to rails or anything like that. It's really more towards the marine side, or if there is something significant there. I will happy to revisit it and have a look, see what we can do on that.
Okay, thank you, Kenny. John McLeod, you have a question.
Thank you, Chair. It was really to do with, it's one thing identifying the scope of work that needs to be done where the equipment is failing. I'm just wondering the adequacy of both revenue and capital resources in order to address these concerns. And just on the terms of notice, generally, we can't simply discharge our duty of care by putting a notice if it's an inherent structural issue. We can't pass the responsibility on to. Of course, it can always be. It's not generally mariners, professional mariners, but we also have casual users and leisure users of these facilities as well. And notice to mariners may not always reach. And I think posting notices in the locality, it generally does not absolve us from a duty of care if there's something inherently faulty or dangerous with the equipment. I think the convener's suggestion in some instances is removal of sometimes is the best way of dealing with these, so people are not inclined to use things that are inherently unsafe.
Okay, Robert, I'm seeing you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I think that's quite a pertinent question. I think the significant challenge for us in the longer term is probably capital expenditure. We have some ageing and a great number of ageing piers and harbours that Kenny is looking after, and the usage of them has changed and reduced over many years. So there is one that I'm aware of where the potential expenditure for one user of the facility could run to £100,000 in terms of repairs and maintenance. So Councillor McLeod's right. We need to make sure that we take steps to remove hazards and to warn people of hazards. But we have assets. We have an extensive asset base, and the usage of that asset base has gone down and changed. So whilst we have some fairly busy ports like Callan, we also have others where there are one or two part-time fishermen operating from them, and really it doesn't make any economic sense. And it will be a challenge for us, I think, in the long term, particularly meeting the capital repairs. That's something that Mr. McKenzie and Mr. Morrison will be bringing forward, I think, ahead of the next capital programme in terms of what's our plan around these, because it's going to be a challenge.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Can I ask you, Kenny, and we've had discussions on this before in relation to Pearson Harbour's master plan for Corla-owned facilities. Have we made any progress on that?
Thanks, Chair. No progress made on the master plan. I have had initial discussions with other departments in terms of assisting us in doing something like that, and I think it's something that would definitely be worthwhile. Certainly, in regards to kind of future planning, in terms of it needs to be that mix of the asset management planning and the kind of master planning to see where there are opportunities out there, and there's certainly. I think we're clear there are opportunities, but I think there's a difficulty in terms of us as a section being able to kind of realise these potentials, just in terms of the kind of, I think the report does highlight the staffing element of it, and that we're very much concentrating on a day-to-day basis rather than the future plan. So any assistance we can get from other sections of the colliery in terms of assisting in master planning would certainly be welcome and would certainly be worthwhile.
I see Mr. McCormick, you've got your hand up.
Thank you very much, Chair. Again, I'm not a member of your committee. I just wondered if Kenny's got any idea of what sort of appetite there is from community organisations to take over some of our properties that are no longer used.
Kenny?
there certainly is in some corners of the island. There is interest in, but again, I think it's difficult for certainly the ones that we would be looking at. I think Paul mentioned it. Robert mentioned places where there's kind of a single slipway, but there's very little opportunity for development. These are kind of historical sites. I mean, the one I've got local to myself here would be Kylescalpy, former ferry slipway. It's one of those that it's likely to cost us money, but there's no usage on it, and then there's no development interest either. So there will be in some corners of the island there will be some interest, but anywhere where there's no development opportunities, no, and we're going to retain these kind of facilities, kind of without a decision being made to remove them. Then we'll have them for years to come.
Okay, thank you, Kenny. I'm not seeing any other hands up. So do members agree the recommendation at 3.1? Yeah, okay, thank you. Item number 7, reports outstanding, and that's for noting. Are we happy to note? Okay, we will now consider the urgent item at number 8 on your iPads. It was agreed at the special call last June to promote temporary 20-mile-per-hour zones in Castleby, Balavanik, Tarbert and Stornoway under the Spaces for People programme. This report provides an update on the process. A number of responses have been received, particularly for the proposals in Stornoway, and these are appended to the report. Colin McKenzie will speak to the report and provide the latest update regarding the the responses and answer any questions. Colin?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, we received the consultation responses on these proposals a week yesterday. So we've been going through them. We've taken some time to go through them and just clarify what they relate to. Are they objections or not? Some of them are a bit ambiguous. So we're going through that process just now. And currently the update is that we have no objections against the Castleby proposal. There's one objection that's been clarified for the Balavanik proposal. There's a couple of clarifications required on Tarbert, but there have been specific objections in relation to the Stornoway proposal. So the process for proceeding is outlined in the report. We'll try to go through the objections, and if we can manage the objections, we can look at implementing. But if not, this will be the same process as for a safe place, where we will refer it to the Scottish Government reporter. I'll maybe stop there, Chair, and take any questions on the process.
Okay, Councillor Norman MacDonald, you're first.
Yeah, thanks again, Chair. I'm not a member of the committee. I have seldom seen or heard as much response to specific proposals I've heard in regard to the 20-mile-an-hour proposal for Stornoway. I don't understand where it's come from. Well, I do understand where it's come from, but I don't understand how we've bought into it. I don't see that there's an issue with road safety in Stornoway. Certainly not one that's been highlighted by the police to any of us. I think I've seen over the last 10 years a significant increase in what this specific proposal was designed to help with, which is access to the roads for people wishing to use it in a COVID crisis for exercise and running, etc. We've had a tenfold increase in the amount of joggers and runners and cyclists on the roads in Stornoway, and I don't see any particular issue. And I, as a pretty significant road user myself, I think most folk who use our roads are cognizant of the increased traffic of runners, joggers, cyclists, etc., and pay specific attention to them, particularly in the hours of darkness. I think it's a ludicrous idea to promote it universally across Stornoway. I've seen sensible proposals where the the smaller roads, but the peripheral arterial routes into Stornoway remain at 30, which would help the flow of traffic be maintained, particularly at peak hours. I can't see 20 mile an hour limits between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the morning and between 4 and 6 doing anything other than cause logjam in Stornoway. I think enough people have thrown in their representations about this to alert us to the fact that there's universal objection to this proposal as it currently stands. There may be room for it to be tweaked a little bit so that the main arterial routes, like I said, remain at 30, and some of the smaller roads, obviously, that are 20, particularly around the schools, which I believe already have a 20 mile an hour limit on them. But there's been universal objection. I can't see many people who have come forward and said this is a good idea. And I think if we go ahead and implement a blanket 20 mile an hour limit in Stornoway, it's going to cause outrage. And I mean outrage.
Okay, do you want to respond to that, Callum, or listen to the other couple of councillors who want to come in?
I'm happy to listen to what the views are. I mean, again, this is a process we're following. So, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's up to members how to proceed.
Okay, Angus Morrison, you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, the query I have, I never even thought of it when this came. First of all, it was brought to my attention, and was brought to my attention by one of the bus operators. And I think it could make reference to R38. I don't know if it's from the same. Reading through all the objections and various things that came in, I think R38 seems to be on the train of thought that I have here. Have we considered the impact this will have on bus timetables if it's implemented? Because one of the main bus operators seems to think it's going to have a detrimental impact on these bus timetables. And I would think that would be the same with Bus Macomb if it was going to happen. Just wondering if we've taken any consideration for that. Thank you.
Okay, Angus, I know David's on the call and they've checked out that particular issue which you raised with me. Can I get the council leader now?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to probably concur with what the feedback that Councillor Norrie MacDonald has had. I've had extensive feedback as well, and I'm sure Calla sees some of the feedback in the consultation feedback. Two points really briefly. One is that is there a way in which we can early on tweak our proposal so that we don't go through a cumbersome process? Because most or 90% of the observations I've had are that okay, do it on the small routes within the town centre, etc. But in terms of the main routes such as Macaulay Road, Malison Road, Sandwick Road, Percival Road, etc., leave it at 30. So is there a way in which we can go ahead and do something which not including these? And the second thing that has come back is from Stornoway Community Council last week. They just made the observation that they thought that the consultation period was a bit short, given that it was over the festive period, and so they felt that some people might not have been made aware of it. So I'm just concerned that even if you do go down a route of trying to discuss it with traffic commissioners or whatever, people might say, well, you didn't allow enough time to consult. So I don't know if that's a consideration. But the main thing is there a way we can tweak it so that we can exclude these main roads and then try it out on a trial basis?
Okay, Callum, I'll let everybody else come in. It's probably the same points. Convener.
Thank you, Chair. I agree absolutely with what Councillor Norrie MacDonald has said. And I think the other thing that could be very much a negative is with the 20 mile an hour limits being indicated at schools and other areas, that it's important that people slow down. If you put that right across the board, people will not pay much heed to it. I think it's really important that we retain the 20 mile an hour limits at the schools and possibly other places where it's absolutely essential. But to take the arterial routes through Stornoway and put a 20 mile an hour limit, I think it certainly wouldn't be it wouldn't be followed. And there could be significant issues going forward. So I certainly think that the centre of the town, absolutely no issue with that whatsoever in terms of traffic calming, and people can understand that. but doing it on the routes that people use generally, like the council leader said, I think would make a mockery out of the whole process.
Okay, thank you, Convener. John Norman MacLeod.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually going to, what I'm done is I spoke to Charlie. Charlie was wanting to sort of, well, he gives his apologies for not being at the meeting, today's meeting. So he did say to me, I said it was coming up on the agenda, and I spoke to him earlier this morning about it. And he's more or less said, very similar to what the leader has said, that he wouldn't want to see it on the main streets, basically the town centre, Sandwick Road, Macaulay Road, etc. But yes, on the back streets. He definitely says that the back streets definitely need to go to 20 miles an hour. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John Norman. Kerry John MacLeod.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have to find myself agreeing with colleagues here, and the Normans have really said it. I think also, as the convener has said, there's a risk of a dilution of impact at the very critical areas in and around or near schools if it's applied across the whole town. I think it's important that we do get traffic slowed down to that level at key times in schools. And the main arterial routes, if this can be tweaked, I think there will be far more acceptance of the proposal. I just made a verbal comment to Mr. Mackenzie when I saw this. I was very surprised I hadn't picked up on it when it was on the coroner's agenda previously, and I found it to be, I think, a particularly short consultation time, although it was extended. So I would support the notion of further looking at it and having the main arterial routes remaining at 30. So I think that's consistent with colleagues.
Okay, thank you, Kenny John. Norman MacDonald, are you wanting back in? Norman? Right, Callum, can you respond to what?
Apologies, Chair. Yeah, I hit mute, but I didn't obviously hit it hard enough. My apologies. Again, I'm not a member of your committee. You know, when I hear a senior council officer who's actually got a little bit of common sense, or an awful lot of common sense in every dealing I've ever had with them, objecting as well, you know, and this Spaces for People agenda has been pushed, as he says, by and I quote directly here, by an Edinburgh-based anti-car group with no idea of the challenges of living and working in the islands. Their stated intention is, quote, create towns where everyone can thrive without having to use a car. Now, I don't know why we're even considering this proposal when we've not had any issues with road safety, we've not had any issues with pollution. The speeding issues that we have had have been dealt with adequately, I believe, by the police. So I just wonder how we've managed to give this proposal so much traction in the first place. It should have been booted out after a brief discussion amongst the Transportation Committee and not given as much credence as it's been given, because frankly, I don't see any need to discuss this any further other than to boot it into the long grass right away.
Right, Callum, you've had some commentary from various members there. You want to respond to the issues raised in terms of maybe getting rid of some of the roads around the perimeter? I know there's been a lot of complaints about speeding in town, you know, but I'll leave the floor to you anyway. Okay,
thanks, Chair. I think we should consider this, and if it's part of Sustrans' main policy to look at it now, there are a lot of thoughts and negative thoughts and you know, theories as to why it's been implemented and you know, not really you know, not really objective. So, I mean, I've tried to be objective on this, and I mean, I've taken this to council before in June on the back of Spaces for People. Now, I have had quite a lot of complaints from local members about speeding in town. We discuss this with Police Scotland regularly, and it was when we were we didn't take this lightly either. We looked at whether we do it as a blanket or do we look at maintaining arterial routes through the town. And Police Scotland were of the view that it's clearer to have the blanket approach because then everybody knows when they're in the town, it's 20. I'm taking on board what all the feedback from the committee are saying, and from what I've got from the consultation, from what I've got from the committee, then there seems to be a desire to leave Macaulay Road, Madison Road, and Sandwick Road as a 30-mile-an-hour arterial route through the town. If it's a committee's wish, I can represent this on that basis. I think the back roads, generally people struggle to go over 20 in it anyway, but it does give a bit more power for actually calming the town centre traffic. So, I mean, I don't want to put my own personal views across it. At the end of the day, this is a CORLA decision. I'm following guidance that I'm getting from professional organisations on this, so it's not treated lightly, and it's not meant to create an uproar in the town. It is genuinely meant to be a means of calming traffic to promote walking and cycling. So if the committee are happy, I can look at representing Stornoway on the basis of having a 30-mile-an-hour arterial route through it, and then do promote the side streets as 20s, if that's the council's wish.
So there is capacity to tweak it, as the council leader said, yeah?
Well, I mean, definitely. I mean, this is a consultation. We will take recognition of what the consultation responses are, and if they shall will to tweak, then happy to do so.
Can you, David MacLeod, comment on the issue of the bus timetables? And I know you checked that, Councillor Morrison's point. David, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still with you. Thank you, Chair. I'm just waiting for my computer to wake up. Yeah, we did some trials using our own MIDI coach without stopping, going through the various routes through town. The impact is between 1 and 3 minutes. So in terms of, for example, Stornoway from Manor / Fusion roundabout, the old Manor roundabout, into the town, restricting the speed of the bus to 20, it adds a minute to the run into the bus station. Bus station to the roundabout at Ingerbretts on Sandwick Road, no real impact at all. Some of them, the bus station to Oliver's Bray via Seaforth Road, that added about 50 seconds. Now we timed this without stops. Obviously, if it's a town run that is dropping people in and around the town, because we operate a hail and ride system, people can get on and off, more or less wherever they want to. So we didn't take account of that at all. We just assumed that we're running straight through. So I think the worst scenario was about a 3-minute addition. Now there are a small number of school runs that maybe are quite close to the edge of the sort of guidance for rural, coming into town. But certainly for the majority of the public services and the majority of the school services, it wouldn't have a significant impact on timetables, so much that you would have to make significant changes. But we would have to look at it. We'd have to, take account of that.
Okay, thank you, David. I've got the convener first, then the leader. Convener.
Just very briefly, Chair. In relation to the residential parts of Stornoway, very often you have on-street parking on both sides of the road, and that in itself is a significant traffic calming measure. And you can see on the arterial routes that we were talking about, whether it be Percival Road or Madison Road, a lot of the people living on these roads have created parking space inside their front garden, as it were, or next to a garage, and that's what allows the traffic to flow on a reasonable basis. So I still still very much agree with my namesake that what we should do is we should focus on the 20-mile-an-hour limit right in the middle of town. Again, there is on-street parking in the centre of town on one side of the road just about every day, right the way through until evening. And it's then that you see the boy racers come up and start doing their own activities there. That the 20-mile-an-hour limit is not going to stop that in any way, shape, or form. The only thing that's going to stop them doing that is by being prosecuted for breaching the limit. So I very much agree with Noddy in terms of what he's suggesting.
Okay, thank you, Convener. Leader.
So I think what Callum is looking for is agreement whether we tweak it to include these, exclude these main routes, or whether we, as I don't know if the convener is suggesting we just don't do anything at all with it and we don't proceed with it. Is he suggesting that the 20-mile-an-hour is in effect happening anyway? So I think we have to decide whether we want Callum to come back with it with some tweaked order or something that doesn't do it at all. Is that correct? Is that where we're at?
I think that's where we're at. Callum, do you want to comment?
Well, perhaps you want to look at them. There's 4 areas. So there have been no objections to Castlebay proposals. So I'd be looking for the COLA approval to actually proceed with that. There's been 1 objection to the Balavanik proposal. So I'm looking for the COLA's opinion on whether to proceed or go to the reporter on that basis. Same with Tarbert. And as for Stornoway, it's whether you want me to consider anything for Stornoway or look at a revised proposal.
Sorry, Chair. I was only referring to the Stornoway one because I thought it was quite clear in his earlier comments that he had no issues around the other 3 areas. Sorry, I wasn't expecting to throw out the whole thing. It was about Stornoway. I was just asking if Callum was of a view as to whether to come back with tweaking it or come back with no change at all in Stornoway from current.
I'm happy to tweak what's been proposed at Stornoway. Okay. Some of the feedback we've got back from Sustrans is that what they try to do is to get a designated route through Stornoway for cyclists and pedestrians, whether it's walking or running. So we can maybe look at that from the point of view that we direct them to safe running areas or safe cycling areas, and that may be more appropriate and more palatable by the committee.
Okay, thank you, Callum. John Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of your committee. I had to go down some part of the report to find any much feedback from Tarbert, because obviously it seems to be almost exclusively with regard to Stornoway. And what feedback there was really sort of mirrored my own view, and that is that Tarbert itself is not a major issue. You've got a school right in the middle of the street. It's not a very long street. You've got physical things like parked cars that almost are there permanently, which means it's a contraflow situation. The major issue, and it's been aired, and I'm sure if Councillor Fulton's there too, aired in many of our inboxes, is the Tarbert Ardasig stretch, because it's straight and, you know, rather, I mean, I know that we're concentrating on whether it should be 20 or not. The main argument from their point of view is that we should be looking at the changing the limit from the 40 to the 30. But I would have to go back to what the convener said, and really, it's not easy just to look at this situation in isolation, because there is no point in putting even a 30 limit on if there is little or no presence, police, or any follow-up. I mean, we have 1 policeman for the whole of Harris, and we have a situation whereby he lives in Stornoway. COVID, of course, comes in. We hardly see the guy. He's supposed to be based in the office in Tarbert, but of course that isn't open any longer. So, you know, it does beg the question to these people that are coming in to say, we need to do something that, as the convener says, you could make it a 30, and they'll still race up and down that at 50 miles an hour. So it's not just about speed limits, it's about the follow-up as well, whereby we can actually do something about it. But anyway, that's my comments. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that, John. I've got Councillor Kenny John McLeod.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me back. Yeah, I'm just wondering if a possible way forward would be, since Mr. McKenzie seems reasonably confident that the comments or objections to the areas out with Stornoway can be addressed, if that can be proceeded, and perhaps in order to get some feedback on the tweaked proposal for Stornoway, whether a MOUG could be set up just to consider further before it would come back to a committee, to avoid having to further tweak it beyond that. So I would think that would be a potential way forward. And just in regard to the speeding, I know from having spoken to Stornoway members and police that it's not always speeding that the issue is in Stornoway, it's noise, and it comes from the boy racers with their rather noisy performance exhausts. So speed isn't necessarily the main thing. Noise is another issue that residents in quieter hours of the late night or early morning are concerned about. But I'm just thinking maybe if we can move forward and take a revised scheme for Stornoway to a MOUG first before it would come back to for ratification.
Okay, thank you, Kenny John. Callum?
Yeah, more than happy to take revisions to a MOUG. So, yeah.
Are members happy with that as a suggestion that the Castlebay, Ballavany, Tarbert go ahead, but we look again at the Stornoway proposal?
Yeah, agreed. Happy with that.
Yeah, are we happy with that?
Happy with that, Chair. I was trying to get in there just on a light-hearted note to finish with. I think David mentioned that you were adding a minute onto the bus time from the Manor Roundabout to the bus station. Given that the only toilet now available for the public is in the bus station, that minute can be a very long time.
Thank you for that very helpful comment, Councillor McKeever. Right, Mayasheen, have you got note of the what recommendations we have now?
Yes, so you're changing C on the basis that you want to revisit the experimental order and report back to the strategic MOUG in the first instance.
Yes.
Okay.
Are members happy with that?
Yeah, happy.
Agreed.
Yes, everybody's delighted. Thank you very much. I think that's us done. I thought this meeting would be over at 10 o'clock, so 11:30. Anyway, the next scheduled meeting of the committee will be on the 24th March 2021 at 9:30 a.m. And thank you all very much for your attendance and for your contributions.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.